Hello and welcome to today's episode of Goat AI News. My name's Katie, I'm your host, and today we are going to be exploring some really exciting topics. We're going to start off with Perplexity AI and their answer engine and all the controversy surrounding that. Then we're going to have a look at the new Toys R Us advert, which has been created only using AI. So buckle up, you're in for a great show. Welcome back to Goat AI News. So let's get started with Perplexity. Now, this is a really new and exciting concept. It's an AI search engine that calls itself an answers engine because essentially, rather than like Google or any other search engine we already have that gives you loads of pages of answers, this gives you one specific curated answer that it's pulled from all of those various web pages. That means that you don't have to do any further digging. This initially rang alarm bells for me because I thought there are inherently going to be biases in the training data, and there are so many subjects that can't just be summarised into one clear, concise answer. And although you are going to have the ability to sort of do a slightly deeper dive and see more variations of opinions on specific subjects, who's realistically going to do that? We don't want to research things ourselves. Generally, we want to be told an answer, and if a platform is offering to do that for us, I think a lot of us will just take that at face value. Now, that worried me initially, but thinking about it further, realistically, who scrolls past the first 5 links on Google anyway? When you're looking for an answer, you might click a few off the first page, but that's pretty much as far as you're going. Google will give you an answer at the top and it will credit that article where it's got the summary from, but it will give you the summary, and if that's an answer that satisfies what you were thinking, you're not actually very likely to go much further than that, or I'm not at least. So I don't think Perplexity AI is actually doing anything different from that. It's just that it's not giving you all the options to feel like you should be obliged to then search through afterwards. So we've already handed over that power to the big search engines, predominantly just Google, but we are kind of already there, and I think to imply otherwise would be kidding ourselves. Google have a lot of power over shaping narratives around subjects by choosing what comes up on the first page when people are looking for it. And I think Perplexity AI isn't really doing anything different from that. Now, they say that they're not competing with Google, but I feel like anybody who's trying to provide answers to people's questions and be the standard platform that people go to get their questions answered is automatically competing with Google. Where they are landing in the most trouble is their Perplexity pages. Now, Forbes, for example, have found quotations directly from published articles which are behind paywalls being spat out by Perplexity AI, and that is understandably upsetting a lot of journalists. Now, when they've done deep dives into subjects and spent years of their life investigating specific stories, and then those stories are being regurgitated word for word on Perplexity pages without the relevant attribution, you can see why various publications would be upset with that. Journalists are already worried about AI taking their jobs without it also stealing their work that is already out there and not crediting them for it. But I don't think that means the whole idea is a complete write-off. I think the answers engine, while it will need a lot of fine-tuning to make sure that it's not swayed in any particular direction, which is going to be really difficult, I do think that would be really useful. So they've received a lot of accusations of plagiarism, and the CEO was kind of dismissive of that, saying, you know, it's still a bit rough around the edges, it's new, we'll figure it out. And I think that that has led to a really bad taste in the media's mouth. If you look at all of the articles surrounding Perplexity, rather than thinking, you know, is this something that could challenge the current search engines and the behemoths of the likes of Google, it's actually saying that this is unethical, immoral, and it needs to be shut down. And you can see why they're coming from that angle, but I do think, you know, it's missing a bit of nuance, and it's coming from a place of anger rather than a place of general objective criticism, which moves me on to our next subject, the Toys R Us advert. Now, this Toys R Us advert was created entirely using Sora's AI video generation tool, which is really interesting. Now, if you saw the very early Sora videos, bearing in mind Sora is still in beta testing phase, so it's not actually available to the public yet. If you saw the very early videos that Sora was producing, you would actually be really impressed by this advert. There's a vague level of consistency, as far as I'm concerned, throughout the video that hasn't always been the case in AI video. So the advert explores the origin story of Toys R Us. It's really sweet. It features the founder of Toys R Us in a childhood toy shop, and then, you know, with Jeffrey the giraffe. It's quite sweet. If you watch it with no sort of previous connotation, it's a little bit weird, but really interesting. It's really cool. If someone came to me and said that they had animated it, I would be like, yeah, great. It looks lovely. That's really nice. I think knowing that it's AI generated, you're looking for faults, and people are tearing it apart online. It's not perfect. You look at it and the faces are slightly inconsistent. There's a main boy who features who doesn't look the same in every frame, and of course that's a problem. But this model is in beta, and it has created this reasonably consistent advert with a reasonably consistent character and a universe surrounding him that makes sense and fits the brand, fits the products that it's advertising. And that's really scary for a lot of people. There's a lot of aspects of AI that is very scary for a lot of people, but I don't think people quite realised how quickly these things would be able to produce media and output of this quality. And people are really picking apart and saying, actually, the quality is not that good. But when you consider how long Sora has been available, even in beta, it is really impressive. If you look at Sora videos when it was first announced, this is really impressive. There was a time when all Sora generated videos were quite obvious. Hands were all over the place, ears were all over the place. And now you kind of have to really be paying attention to spot that kind of thing. Although if you have a look on X, you will see that there are lots of people pointing out lots of issues. I do once again feel like this criticism might be coming from a place of fear rather than sort of objectively reviewing the video itself, which is a shame because this is a real feat of technology. The fact that we've created something that can create itself is incredible. When this is released to the public and is learning as it goes, I think it's going to be pretty much unstoppable. And I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from, completely understandably, of course. Personally, I think the advert's lovely. I think considering it's been produced by a piece of software that's still in beta, it's incredible. And considering this is the first of its kind, imagine what it will be able to produce in 5 years. And I feel like I've spent a lot of this podcast, this episode, and others saying exactly that. If this is where we are now, imagine where we'll be in a year, 5 years. But that's the case with a lot of AI. The criticism seems to not take into account the context of how long this has been available and how impressive it is that we are where we are already. So despite all the criticism that this advert has drawn in around itself, I do think that this is a really exciting time to see how quickly this all develops, which companies are willing to take the risk and potentially receive the backlash for employing these methods of production rather than the traditional methods. There are going to be cases where companies can't afford to hire a whole production and AI is actually a better option. What we don't want is to put a whole industry out of work, and industries are going to have to start incorporating these tools because otherwise the tools are going to take over and they will be left behind. But for now, I think it's a really interesting space to watch. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for bearing with me this whole time. Please do like, comment, subscribe, the usual, so that I know that you're there. And I will be back very soon with new AI updates. Thank you for joining me.